Following Zabuton's warning taps, Hiraku, Ru, and Tia immediately run in the direction of the intruder. Up in the sky flying towards them, they can see a large red wyvern. The wyvern flaps its wings and gives a loud roar over the forest. Hiraku had never expected a monster like that to show up, and he hopes that maybe it will just ignore them and pass through. Unfortunately, the wyvern instantly compresses mana in its mouth and prepares itself to breathe fire. Lu and Tia quickly act and put a strong barrier over the farm. The wyvern's breath attack coming at them was blocked, but small fires rain down and start burning the farm. The elves rapidly jump into action to put out the fire. Lu and Tia are considering if they should attack the wyvern, but Lu isn't sure if they can even pierce the wyvern's barriers. Hiraku is worriedly looking around thinking about what they should do. With the elves putting out fires and the wyvern flying over them, he wonders if they should try to escape into the forest, but the wyvern can just follow them from the sky. He realizes that his only choice is to drive the wyvern away, but how? While thinking that he has to protect everyone, the magic omnipotent farming tool suddenly materializes in his hand in the shape of a spear. He starts wondering how that ever happened, but he has no time to think about it. He just decides to take the power and fully use it. With that, he powerfully throws the spear at the flying wyvern. The spear flew straight and true toward the wyvern, but the wyvern creates a 3-layered barrier to protect itself. The spear and the barrier clash in a brilliant show of power, but the spear manages to break through the 3 barriers and hit the wyvern at its wing, burning it away. Back in the ground, Ru and Tia cannot believe what happened. The tool turns to Hiraku's hand and he repeats the process. He again changes it into a spear and throws it at the wyvern. The spear goes straight through its chest and the wyvern falls down to the forest below. While walking to the wyvern's crash site, Ria reports to Hiraku that they managed to put out the fires. There was some damage to the crop fields, but all of the buildings were fine. Meanwhile, they finally reach the dead wyvern's corpse. He asks the others if there are more of those creatures, and Lu explains that there are, but running into one as large as the one that attacked them is a very rare occurrence. Hiraku wonders if someone might have sent the wyvern to specifically attack them, but Tia points out that if someone does manage to command a wyvern, they wouldn't send such a rare and valuable creature off on its own, so the wyvern most probably is just a wild one. As his last question, Hiraku asks the girls if they can eat the wyvern. That afternoon, Hiraku cooks the wyvern meat into different delicacies. He was able to create a wyvern round steak grilled with spices. As for the breast meat, he wrapped it in leaves and steamed it. The tail meat, meanwhile, was simmered into a stew with various vegetables. Everyone starts eating and they all find the food very delicious. While eating, Lu curiously asks Tia if she can block an attack from the spear, like the one Hiraku used earlier, and Tia answered that she absolutely couldn't. The attack was powerful enough to pierce through a 3-layered barrier and blow a hole through a wyvern's chest. The 2 girls realized that they were very lucky that Kuro and the dogs were the only ones that they ran into first when they came here, not Hiraku and his spear. Hiraku notices the 2 girls talking and asks them if they found a bone or something, and the girls immediately change the topic. At that same moment, in the demonic kingdom of Galgarado, inside the Demon Lord's castle, 3 individuals are having a meeting. They are 3 of the Demon Lord's 4 great generals, Bizel, Randan, and Gratz. They cannot believe the report they have just received of a wyvern being killed. A wyvern drawing near would have immediately required them to mobilize their entire military force, but someone managed to kill it with just 2 hits. They instantly realize they cannot fight someone like that. Bizel reminds them as generals they have to handle the situation before fear and panic spreads among their citizens. Randan immediately suggests an idea. They should resign. Elsewhere in the Gatekeeper Dragons, the dragon Drime is talking with a human, Gucci. They have just witnessed the fight between the human and the dragon, and Drime asks Gucci what would happen if he received such an attack from the spear. Gucci honestly tells him that it would have cleanly speared through him. He then tells the dragon that it would be foolish for them to attack, and Drime agrees. The next day, Hiraku is quietly staring at his vineyard. The wyvern meat was every bit as delicious as it was said to be, but he felt like there was still one thing missing from the meal. The girls then arrive and Hiraku tells them that it's time for them to create alcohol. If they are going to make alcohol out of grapes, then it's going to be wine. Wine already existed in this world, so everyone was excited about making it. The elves quickly harvested all the grapes in the vineyard and gathered them in large baskets. Now all that's left is to squish them and let them ferment. To do that, Hiraku makes a contraption where they put all the grapes and the girls can crush it with their feet. The girls are hesitant to stomp on something that they're going to drink, but Hiraku encourages them from below the machine, where he is waiting to gather the juices. He had prepared barrels with the high elf Lalasha's help, making the containers watertight. Tia and Ria hesitantly step on the grapes and start crushing them. Hiraku instructs them to move in a circular motion around the thing, but Tia slips and falls down on Ria, covering them both in juices. After getting up, Tia suggests that they could probably stomp easier if they have a way to be in rhythm. That way, all their movements will be in sync. One of the elves proposes a song that they used to sing in their village while working together. They all sing the song together, and the two girls stomping the grapes follow the beat of the songs. Thanks to their new rhythm, they are able to stomp in sync around the thing, and juice continuously flows out to the barrels. Tia invites Lu to join them, and Lu happily drags Hiraku along. By late afternoon, they were able to finish crushing all the grapes and collect their juices. Now, the yeast on the skin of the grapes should ferment them. Hiraku wonders if they made too much since they were able to collect 16 barrels of juices. But Lu points out that they are surely just going to drink it all anyway. Meanwhile, God is kneeling in front of the goddess of agriculture and is asking for forgiveness. After all, they have just watched Hiraku happily living his life. However, the goddess reminds God that he mistakenly punished an innocent human soul, sneakily tried to save him, and ended up sending him to the forest of death. On top of that, he gave the human a replica of the holy lance Grime. God tries to make excuses and tells the goddess that the human is only using the replica as a farming tool. The goddess points out that the replica should have drained the Hiraku of his life force. But God explains that he also gave Hiraku super fast recovery abilities, meaning that he recovers everything the replica sucks out. Lastly, the goddess shakes in anger since her statue turned out to be an old man. As punishment, she makes his father, the god, to sit on his knees for 300 years. Back on the farm, Zabuton's warning bell rings again, and Hiraku checks it out armed with his spear. To his surprise, it was a strange little girl wrapped up in Zabuton's webs. Lu notices the girl and realizes that it's her little sister, Flora. A little while later, Flora is now dressed and explaining why she was in the forest. After she heard that Lu was being chased by the angel Tia, she followed her all the way there. Since she's already there, Hiraku invites her to stay with them for a while. Flora accepts his offer, but she can't believe Hiraku is her sister's husband. Lu explains that Hiraku is actually the one in charge, the master of the Inferno Wolves, and he even took down a wyvern. Flora finally understands her sister and she prostrates herself in front of Hiraku as an apology. Meanwhile, this is the first time Hiraku learns that Kuro and his ilk are actually Inferno Wolves. Kuro demonstrates the Inferno in their names by blowing fire out of his mouth. Afterward, they feed Flora the various delicacies they have cooked at the farm. She immediately takes a liking to tofu, the soft white stuff made from soybeans. Hiraku then proceeds to explain that he actually wants to cook miso and soy sauce, which are also both made from fermented soybeans. It seems that in this world, fermented foods like wine and cheese exist. However, people aren't aware of the microorganisms that cause the fermentation. Flora immediately starts taking down notes after hearing Hiraku's explanation. Hiraku recognizes that, just like Lu, Flora seems to be very passionate about her research. After staying for a few days, Flora leaves, stating that she'll bring the wonders of miso and soy sauce to the world. After 1 month, she finally returns with an army of maids and some animals, and the representatives of the maids introduces herself and asks Hiraku for some work. Meanwhile, Hiraku appreciates the cows Flora brought along since they can now make butter and cheese. Meanwhile, Tia, who is watching the proceedings, suddenly realizes that everyone seems to be in a group. The vampires now have a lot of maids. There are also a lot of elves. The wolves have a pack, and even the spiders aren't alone. Meanwhile, she's all by herself. Tia instantly tells Hiraku that she'll be gone for a few days and flies away. When she returns, she now has her underlings with her. There are 3 angels, Gran Maria, Kudel, and Corone, as well as a group of lizardmen with Daga as their leader. She also brought some chickens so they can have eggs. The maids quickly take over the chores on the farm. Hiraku notices that they were just eating simple dishes like boiled potatoes, so he teaches them different cooking methods. The maids were strong thanks to their race being ogres, and also quick learners, being able to serve him food after teaching them how to cook. As for the angels, Tia orders them to be the guards around the forest so that incidents like the wyvern showing up won't easily happen again. The lizardmen become the ones in charge of all the laborious work outdoors. Meanwhile, Ria had gathered all the remaining elves in the forest and brought them there to help. Hiraku asks why she just brought girl elves, but Ria explains that the men weren't able to survive. Nevertheless, they plan to start rebuilding their population. Hiraku cheers them on and decides not to ask how they plan to do it. A few days later, Hiraku gathers the representatives of everyone for a meeting. He wants to come up with a name for their place. Before it was just his hut and some fields, but now they are almost like a village. Lu suggests that they should name it after the founder, but Hiraku doesn't really like the names Hiraku Village or Machio Town. The maid Anne suggests naming it after the forest, but Hiraku doesn't exactly know the name of the forest. After learning that it's called the Forest of Death, he also immediately rejects the name Village of Death. The spider Zabuton then raises her head and points at the door, prompting Hiraku to open it. Upon opening the door, Hiraku gazes at the giant tree outside. With that, he decides to name the place the Great Tree Village. That night, in front of a great bonfire, Hiraku announces their new name, and in celebration, they are holding a party. It would also be the debut of their new drink, the first batch of wine made in the Great Tree Village. Everyone starts chanting "Mayor" at Hiraku, and he reminds them that that's something they need to decide later together. The chants, however, didn't stop, and Lu and Tia also voiced their support for him. Left with no choice, Hiraku accepts the position and happily cheers with them. The party then commences with everyone eating, drinking, and dancing together. Later, a drunk Tia notices Hiraku quietly watching them and invites him to sit beside her. She asks him if he's okay, and he just admits that he's so happy that everything feels like a dream. The two toast their new village, and Hiraku watches everyone in celebration.